Hello everyone, benvenuti. Welcome to Italian Teacher Formic. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about pronunciation with Italian, the letters, the vowels, the consonants, and even some combinations that you could see at one point in time or another, making sure that your pronunciation is top-notch and ready to go. So let's go ahead and start off with le lettere. So for each of these letters here on the alphabet, you see that I have not only the letter, but also a sample of a word below. So go ahead and repeat after me. A, aereo. B, bicicletta. C, cane. D, dizionario. E, esame. F, festa. G, gatto. H, hamburger. I, inverno. L, libro. M, macchina. N, numero. O, orologio. P, penna. Q, quaderno. R, residenza. S, studente. T, televisione. U, università. V, voto. Z, zaino. These are the letters that exist in the Italian alphabet. But we have specific vowels, I vocali, and then sometimes they could be used in something called a ditongo and also a tritongo. Let's go ahead and take a look. The idea of the vowels are either a, say a, say I, say I, o, say o, and u, say u. As a way that we can go ahead and think about them, on my screen right now, I have for you some common words that we use in English that have that same exact sound. So when we're thinking of the a, think of the word father. Go ahead and say father. Father. When you think of that a, that's the sound in Italian that we'd be making. The letter I, would be as if we were to see marine. And we'll go ahead and say marine. When you say marine, that E, that's the sound that we see with the letter I. What about you? Ooh. Rule. Go ahead and say the word rule. When you think about that word and say it, it's going to go ahead and have that same sound as the oo in Italian. So father, marine, and rule. Now with the vowels E and O, depending on if it is open or if it is closed, it's going to go ahead and sound a little bit different. If we look at the letter E, let's go ahead and say the word bait. A, bait. That could be one of the options that we see in Italian with the letter E. But what about when we say the word in English quest? Quest, it also might sound that way. Now, when it comes to the letter E, knowing if it's going to be sounding like bait or like quest, we want to go ahead and just know that the more practice that we get with words, it'll go ahead and eventually make a lot more sense. For the letter O, same idea. One's going to be opened, one's going to be closed. Go ahead and repeat after me. Cozy. Cost. Cozy. Cost. A little bit of variation there. Again, just like the letter E, the more practice that we get, reading, listening, the easier that we're going to be able to tell if it is going to be opened or closed, or which of these options is going to be used. But let's talk about those ditongi e tritongi. The idea of a diphthong in English, or ditongi in Italian, is a combination of two vowels that are going to be pronounced as one single syllable. Take a look at the examples that I have on the screen. Auguri, we see the AU has to be pronounced all as sort of one swoop. Auguri. Give it a try. Auguri. Fuori. Fuori. Got to get all those vowels in there, the U and the O. Fuori. Next one. Piano. Give it a try. Piano. Again, we got to make sure we have that E and the A. What about the last one? Piedi. Piedi. Getting that I and that E in there. Piedi. So those are two vowels that are right next to each other. They have to be pronounced as one single syllable. But what about a tritongo? Tritongi, that's a combination of three vowels there, pronounced as one single syllable. Let's take a look. Puoi. Puoi. That U, O, and I all have to be mentioned. Puoi. Guai. Guai. Miei. Miei. Suoi. Suoi. Pretty good. What about the letter C? When the letter C is before either the A, O, or U, it has a hard sound. Like in English when we say the word cup. Say cup. When the C is in front of the A, it's going to sound like ka. C-O, ko. C-U, ku. Ka, ko, ku. Hard sound. When the C, though, is in front of the E or the I, it's going to be a soft sound, as if we were saying the word in English, cheap. Say it, cheap. So if we saw C-E, we say che. C-I, chi. So we have hard sound ka, ko, ku, soft sound che, chi. When, though, we have the combination CH, that can only be followed by either an E or an I. And that's only going to be a hard sound. So that'd be the idea of ki, C-H-I, or K, C-H-E. Let's take a look at some examples. A hard C could be, for example, casa. Say casa. Cantare. Say cantare. Conto. Say conto. What about that soft C? Ci. C'è. Cibo. All again examples of the soft C. But what about that hard CH? K. Chi. And a very famous word that we use here in English, chianti. What about the letter G, though? When the G goes before A, O, or U, the consonant has a hard sound, like in English when we say game. Everyone say game. So G-A, ga, G-O, go, G-U, gu. Ga, go, gu. Hard sound. When the G goes before an E or an I, it becomes a soft sound, as in the English word jelly. Jelly. G-E, je, G-I, G. Ga, go, gu, je, G. Hard and soft. The combination GH, though, only appears before an E or an I, but that goes back to that idea of a hard sound. So GHE, ge, GHI, gi. Let's take a look at some examples. Hard G. Pagare, prego, ragù. Soft G. Gelato, vegetariano, cugini. Hard GH. Spaghetti, Sughi, paghi. Still with me? Let's take a look at our next one. La lettera Z, the letter Z. Now this can have two variations. It could either sound like a DZ, like for example in English when we say the word beds, everyone's like beds, beds. It sounds like a D in front of the letter Z. Or we could have it sounding like when we have a TZ. For example, bets, bets. There's that variation there. Again, it's going to get in a little bit of practice the more that we do see it, read it, and hear it. Let's take a look at some examples. Zero, zona, pranzo. Calzini, grazie, alzarsi. Variation. But what about if there was a double consonant? The double Z there. All that is just going to be a little bit lengthened. An extra D or an extra T sound. Let's take a look. Pizza, mazzo, mezzo. Just elongating it a little bit to get that double consonant sound. What about the combination though, SC? Before an A, O, or U, the combination SC has a hard sound, like when we see the word sky. Go ahead and say sky. SCA, ska. SCO, sko. SCU, sku. Ska, sko, sku. What about before an E or an I? The SC would then have a soft sound, like in English when we say she. Everyone say she. She, SCE. She, SCI. The combination SCH only is going to appear before an E or an I, and it's going to go back to that same hard sound. What I always tell students here is that remember the CHE or the CHI? Ke, ki, just had an S in front. Ske, ski. Let's take a look at some examples. Hard C, pesca, ascoltare, scusa. Soft SC, scegliere, pesce, sciarpa. So we're not really learning anything new here with this concept, this combination. We're just taking that C, using that rule, and just putting an S in front. Let's look at that hard SCH. Pesche, maschio, schiena. Not too bad. What about the combination GLI? This has what's considered a palatal sound, like when we say in English the word million. Go ahead and say million. L, million. L, L. That's the sound that we're going to be having. So let's take a look at some examples. Li, famiglia, figli, svegliarsi, tovagliolo, voglia. It's important to know that with this combination, the G is not pronounced very sharp, hard, or soft. It's in that combination with the LI there to make that sound like million. L. But there is a difference if we had just two L's. At that point, it wouldn't be that palatal sound like L. It would be more of the actual L. Collana, tortellini, pollo. So there's a difference there. We got to make that actual double L sound as opposed to the GLI, that li sound. What about the combination GN? The combination, it sounds like in English the word canyon. Go ahead and say canyon. Let's look at some examples. Gnocchi, guadagnare, ingegnere, insegnare. So it's like that ny sound to make that pronunciation clear. Again, the G is not hard. It's not pronounced. It's in that combination there to all be put together. There is a difference, though, like we saw in the previous one with GLI, with the actual combination of NN. Nonno, anni, Gianni, compleanno. So that double N has to be pronounced as an N, as opposed to the GN, which is going to be more nya. What about le lettere Q e U? So this sound in particular is usually spelled as the Q and then the U. Like, for example, if we saw the word quando. Go ahead and say quando. What about qualcosa? Quattro. That Q is that QU. But when that actual combination is preceded by the letter C, it's going to be slightly lengthened in sound, as what we normally would have done with a double consonant. So if we look at that first example there, acquatico, acquatico, acqua marina, acqua marina, acquistare, acquistare, slightly lengthened. Now, there are some words, though, that have that Q sound, but are spelled with a C. These, again, in difference, need to be just sort of taken note of, memorized. That way you're excelling with that pronunciation. But let's see two examples. Cuore, scuola. So those are two examples of that Q sound, but being with the letter C instead. What about le lettere R e R, the double R? So the sound of the regular R by itself is pronounced with just a single flutter, where the tip of the tongue is going toward the top of those upper front teeth. Droga, freddo, regione, Roma. Just sort of in a single flutter. But that double R, that's where we have to go ahead and have the multiple flutter, where that tip of the tongue is against the top of those upper front teeth. Arrosto, birra, corriamo, guerra. Go ahead and give it a shot one more time. Arrosto, birra, corriamo, guerra. For pronunciation overall, when it comes to sentences, it's important for us to take note that there are three kinds of sentences that we could have. We could have a sentence being an affermazione, or a statement, a domanda, or a question, or an esclamazione, which is an exclamation. Each one has its own particular punctuation. Affermazione would obviously end in a period. Domanda would end with a question mark, and esclamazione would end with some sort of exclamation point. Now, the only difference when you're speaking is that there would be a rise in intonation, the way in which you're actually saying that phrase. So if we looked at the example of an affermazione, we're going to read that sort of straight through. Sono le nove. Sono le nove. No change. If I was reading an esclamazione, it has to go straight up. Sono le nove. Sono le nove. The actual intonation of my voice goes up. Lastly, if it was a domanda, think about it as a roller coaster. Starting at one point, you go up, you go down, and then you end on a high note. Sono le nove. Sono le nove. That's how you're going to go ahead and ask a question. Keep in mind, though, there is no equivalent to the English do or does when forming those questions. We'll talk about that in another video. Until then, grazie e ci vediamo la prossima volta. Ciao ciao!